The Law of One, Book 1, Session 3, January 21st, 1981. Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in love and the light of the one infinite Creator. I communicate with you now. Questioner. My first question is, did we correctly perform the ritual for starting the communication? Ra. I am Ra. The placement of the artifacts designated to balance the instrument should be placed at the instrument's head for the least distortion of effect. The remainder of the beginning account of purpose is quite acceptable for those speaking desire to serve. Otherwise, the attendant emphasis and mind complexities would not have been affected properly. We caution you to guard against those who are not wishing to serve others above all else from taking part in the beginning or in lending their distortions of mind-body-spirit complex to any session, as we should then be unable to properly blend our distortions with those of this instrument. Questioner. Should I move the Bible, candle, and incense at this time? Ra. I am Ra. This would be most appropriate. Questioner. After moving the items, is this the proper position? Ra. I am Ra. Please correct the angle of the incense so that it is perpendicular to the plane of 20 degrees north by northeast. Questioner. After making the correction, is this satisfactory? Ra. I am Ra. Please check by eye to make fine correction. We will explain the process by which this becomes a significant distortion balancer. The incense acts as energizer to the physical body of this instrument, signifying its humanity. This is therefore a necessity that the wafted smoke is perceived from the same relative angle as the instrument perceives the open Bible, balanced by the lighted candle, signifying love light and light love, and, therefore, give the mental and emotional, shall we call it, distortion complex of this instrument, the sight of paradise and peace which it seeks. Thus, energized from the lower to the higher, the instrument becomes balanced and does not grow fatigued. We appreciate your concern, for this will enable our teach learning to proceed more easily. Questioner. Does everything appear correctly aligned now? Ra. I am Ra. I judge it within limits of acceptability. Questioner. At the last session, we had 2 questions that we were saving for this session. One having to do with the possible capstone on top of the Great Pyramid at Giza. The other having to do with how you moved the heavy blocks that make up the pyramid. I know these questions are of no importance with respect to the Law of One, but it was my judgment, and please correct me if I am wrong and make the necessary suggestions, that this would provide an easy entry for those who would read the material that will eventually become a book. We are grateful for your contact and will certainly take any suggestions as to how we should receive this information. Ra. I am Ra. I will not suggest the proper series of questions. This is your prerogative as free agent of the Law of One, having understood that our social memory complex cannot effectually discern the distortions of the societal mind-body-spirit complex of your peoples. We wish now to fulfill our teach learning, honor, responsibility by answering what is asked. This only will suffice, for we cannot plumb the depths of the distortion complexes which infect your peoples. The first question, therefore, is the capstone. We iterate the unimportance of this type of data. The so-called pyramid had 2 capstones. One was of our design and was of smaller and carefully contrived pieces of the material upon your planet, which you call granite. This was contrived for crystalline properties and for the proper flow of your atmosphere via type of what you would call chimney. At a time when we as a people had left your density, the original was taken away and a more precious one substituted. It consisted in part of a golden material. This did not change the properties of the pyramid, as you call it, at all, and was a distortion due to the desire of a few to mandate the use of the structure as a royal place only. Do you wish to query further upon this first question? Questioner: what did you mean by chimney? What was its specific purpose? Ra: I am Ra. There is a proper flow of your atmosphere which, though small, freshens the whole of the structure. This was designed by having airflow ducts, as this instrument might call them, situated so that there was a freshness of atmosphere without any disturbance or draft. Questioner: how were the blocks moved? Ra: I am Ra. You must picture the activity within all that is created. The energy is, though finite, quite large compared to the understanding distortion by your peoples. This is an obvious point well known to your people, but little considered. This energy is intelligent. It is hierarchical, much as your mind-body-spirit complex dwells within a hierarchy of vehicles and retains, therefore, the shell or shape or field and the intelligence of each ascendingly intelligent or balanced body. So does each atom of such a material as rock. When one can speak to that intelligence, the finite energy of the physical or chemical rock body is put into contact with that infinite power, which is resident in the more well-tuned bodies, be they human or rock. With this connection made, a request may be given. The intelligence of infinite rockness communicates to its physical vehicle, and that splitting and moving which is desired is then carried out through the displacement of the energy field of rockness from finity to a dimension which we may conveniently call simply infinity. In this way, that which is required is accomplished due to a cooperation of the infinite understanding of the Creator indwelling in the living rock. This is, of course, the mechanism by which many things are accomplished, which are not subject to your present means of physical analysis of action at a distance. Questioner: I am reminded of the statement, approximately, that if you had faith to move a mountain, the mountain would move. This seems to be approximately what you are saying, that if you are fully aware of the law of one, you would be able to do these things. Is that correct? Ra: I am Ra. The vibratory distortion of sound, faith, is perhaps one of the stumbling blocks between those of what we may call the infinite path and those of the finite proving understanding. You are precisely correct in your understanding of the congruency of faith and intelligent infinity. However, one is a spiritual term, the other more acceptable, perhaps to the conceptual framework distortions of those who seek with measure and pen. Questioner: then if an individual is totally informed with respect to the law of one and lives the law of one, then such things as the building of the pyramid by direct mental effort would be commonplace. Is that what I am to understand? Ra: I am Ra. You are incorrect in that there is a distinction between the individual power through the law of one and the combined or societal memory complex mind-body-spirit understanding of the law of one. In the first case, only the one individual, purified of all flaws, could move a mountain. In the case of mass understanding of unity, each individual may contain an acceptable amount of distortion, and yet the mass mind could move mountains. The progress is normally from the understanding which you now seek to a dimension of understanding which is governed by the laws of love and which seeks the laws of light. Those who are vibrating with the law of light seek the law of one. Those who vibrate with the law of one seek the law of foreverness. We cannot say what is beyond this dissolution of the unified self with all that there is, for we still seek to become all that there is, and still are we Ra. Thus our paths go onward. Questioner: Was the pyramid then built by the mutual action of many? Ra, I am Ra. The pyramids which we thought built were constructed thought forms created by our social memory complex. Questioner. Then the rock was created in place rather than moved from someplace else. Is that correct? Ra, I am Ra. We built with everlasting rock the Great Pyramid, as you call it. Other of the pyramids were built with stone, moved from one place to another. Questioner. What is everlasting rock? Ra, I am Ra. If you can understand the concept of thought forms, you will realize that the thought form is more regular in its distortion than the energy field created by the materials in the rock, which has been created through thought form from thought to finite energy and beingness in your, shall we say, distorted reflection of the level of the thought form. May we answer you in any more helpful way? Questioner. This is rather trivial, but I was wondering why the pyramid was built with many blocks rather than creating the whole thing as one form created at once. Ra, I am Ra. There is a law which we believe to be one of the more significant primal distortions of the law of one. That is the law of confusion. You have called this the law of free will. We wished to make a healing machine or time-space ratio complex which was as efficacious as possible. However, we did not desire to allow the mystery to be penetrated by the peoples in such a way that we became worshipped as builders of a miraculous pyramid. Thus it appears to be made, not thought. Questioner. Well, then you speak of the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, I assume, as primarily a healing machine, and also you spoke of it as a device for initiation. Are these one and the same concept? Ra, I am Ra. They are part of one complex of light, love, intent, sharing. To use the healing properly, it was important to have a purified and dedicated channel or energizer for the love light of the infinite creator to flow through. Thus, the initiatory method was necessary to prepare the mind, the body, and the spirit for service in the creator's work. The two are integral. Questioner. Does the shape of the pyramid have a function in the initiation process? Ra, I am Ra. This is a large question. We feel that we shall begin and ask you to reevaluate and ask further at a later session this somewhat, shall we say, informative point. To begin, there are two main functions of the pyramid in relation to the initiatory procedures. One has to do with the body. Before the body can be initiated, the mind must be initiated. This is the point at which most adepts of your present cycle find their mind-body-spirit complexes distorted from. When the character and personality that is the true identity of the mind has been discovered, the body then must be known in each and every way. Thus, the various functions of the body need understanding and control with detachment. The first use of the pyramid, then, is the going down into the pyramid for purposes of deprivation of sensory input so that the body may, in a sense, be dead and another life begin. We advise at this time any necessary questions and a fairly rapid ending of the session. Have you any query at this time space? Questioner. The only question is there anything that we have done wrong or that we could do to make the instrument more comfortable? Ra, I am Ra. We scan this instrument. This instrument has been much aided by these precautions. We suggest only some attention to the neck, which seems in this body distortion to be distorted in the area of strength-weakness. More support, therefore, to the neck area may be an aid. Questioner. Should we have the instrument drink the water from the chalice behind her head, or should we have her drink from another glass after we charge it with love? Ra, I am Ra. That and only that chalice shall be the most beneficial, as the virgin material living in the chalice accepts, retains, and responds to the love vibration activated by your beingness. I am Ra. I will now leave this group rejoicing in the power and peace of the One Creator. Adonai. The Law of One, Book 1, Session 4, January 22nd, 1981. Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. I communicate with you now. Questioner. When we finished the last session, I had asked a question that was too long to answer. It had to do with the shape of the pyramid, its relationship to the initiation. Is this the appropriate time to ask this question? Ra. I am Ra. Yes, this is an appropriate time, space to ask that question. Questioner. Does the shape of the pyramid have an effect upon the initiation? Ra. I am Ra. As we began the last session question, you have already recorded in your individual memory complex the first use of the shape having to do with the body complex initiation. The initiation of spirit was a more carefully designed type of initiation as regards the time-space ratios about which the entity to be initiated found itself. If you will picture with me the side of the so-called pyramid shape and mentally imagine this triangle cut into 4 equal triangles, you will find the intersection of the triangle, which is at the first level on each of the 4 sides, forms a diamond in a plane which is horizontal. The middle of this plane is the appropriate place for the intersection of the energies streaming from the infinite dimensions and the mind-body-spirit complexes of various interwoven energy fields. Thus, it was designed that the one to be initiated would, by mind, be able to perceive and then channel this, shall we say, gateway to intelligent infinity. This, then, was the second point of designing the specific shape. May we provide a further description of any kind to your query? Questioner. Yes, as I understand it then, the initiate was to be on the center line of that pyramid, but at an altitude above the base, as defined by the intersection of the 4 triangles made by dividing each side. Is that correct? Ra. I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner. Then at this point, there is a focusing of energy that is extra-dimensional in respect to our dimensions. Am I right? Ra. I am Ra. You may use that vibratory sound complex. However, it is not totally and specifically correct. There are no extra dimensions. We would prefer the use of the term multidimensional. Questioner. Is the size of the pyramid a function of the effectiveness of the initiation? Ra. I am Ra. Each size pyramid has its own point of streaming in of intelligent infinity. Thus, a tiny pyramid that can be placed below a body or above a body will have specific and various effects depending upon the placement of the body in relationship to the entrance point of intelligent infinity. For the purposes of initiation, the size needed to be large enough to create the impression of towering size, so that the entrance point of multidimensional intelligent infinity would completely pervade and fill the channel, the entire body being able to rest in this focused area. Furthermore, it was necessary for healing purposes that both channel and the one to be healed be able to rest within that focused point. Questioner. Is the large pyramid at Giza still usable for this purpose, or is it no longer functional? Ra. I am Ra. That, like many other pyramid structures, is like the piano out of tune. It, as this instrument would express it, plays the tune but oh so poorly. The disharmony jangles the sensitivity. Only the ghost of the streaming still remains, due to the shifting of the streaming points, which is in turn due to the shifting electromagnetic field of your planet, due also to the discordant vibratory complexes of those who have used the initiatory and healing place for less compassionate purposes. Questioner: would it be possible to build a pyramid and properly align it and use it today from the materials that we have available? Ra, I am Ra. It is quite possible for you to build a pyramid structure. The material used is not critical, merely the ratios of time-space complexes. However, the use of the structure for initiation and healing depends completely upon the inner disciplines of the channels attempting such work. Questioner: my question then would be, are there individuals incarnate upon the planet today who would have the inner disciplines to, using your instructions, construct and initiate in a pyramid they built? Is this within the limits of what anyone on the planet today can do? Or is there no one available for this? Ra, I am Ra. There are people, as you call them, who are able to take this calling at this nexus. However, we wish to point out once again that the time of the pyramids, as you would call it, is past. It is indeed a timeless structure. However, the streamings from the universe were, at the time we attempted to aid this planet, those which required a certain understanding of purity. This understanding has, as the streamings revolved and all things evolve, changed to a more enlightened view of purity. Thus, there are those among your people at this time whose purity is already one with intelligent infinity. Without the use of structures, healer-patient can gain healing. May we further speak to some specific point? Questioner: is it possible for you to instruct in these healing techniques if we could make available an individual who had the native ability? Ra, I am Ra. It is possible. We must add that many systems of teach-learning, the healing patient nexus, are proper given the various mind-body-spirit complexes. We ask your imagination to consider the relative simplicity of the mind in the earlier cycle and the less distorted, but often overly complex, views and thought spirit processes of the same mind-body-spirit complexes after many incarnations. We also ask your imagination to conceive of those who have chosen the distortion of service and have removed their mind-body-spirit complexes from one dimension to another, thus bringing with them in totally latent form many skills and understandings which more closely match the distortions of the healing patient processes. Questioner: I would very much like to continue investigation into the possibility of this healing process, but I'm a little lost as to where to begin. Can you tell me where my first step would be? Ra, I am Ra. I cannot tell you what to ask. I may suggest that you consider the somewhat complex information just given, and thus discover several avenues of inquiry. There is one health, as you call it, in your polarized environment, but there are several significantly various distortions of types of mind-body-spirit complexes. Each type must pursue its own learned teaching in this area. Questioner: would you say then that the first step would be to find an individual with ability brought with him into this incarnation? Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: once I have selected an individual to perform the healing, it would be helpful to receive instruction from you. Is this possible? Ra, I am Ra. This is possible given the distortions of vibratory sound complexes. Questioner: I'm assuming then that the selected individual would be one who is very much in harmony with the law of one. Even though he may not have any intellectual understanding of it, he should be living the law of one? Ra. I am Ra. This is both correct and incorrect. The first case, that being correctness, would apply to one such as the questioner himself, who has the distortions towards healing, as you call it. The incorrectness which shall be observed is the healing of those whose activities in your space-time illusion do not reflect the law of one, but whose ability has found its pathway to intelligent infinity, regardless of the plane of existence from which this distortion is found. Questioner: I'm a little confused. I partially understand you, but I'm not sure that I fully understand you. Could you restate that in another way? Ra. I am Ra. I can restate that in many ways, given this instrument's knowledge of your vibratory sound complexes. I will strive for a shorter distortion at this time. Two kinds there are who can heal. Those such as yourself who, having the innate distortion towards knowledge-giving of the law of one, can heal but do not, and those who, having the same knowledge but showing no significant distortions toward the law of one in mind, body, or spirit, yet, and nevertheless, have opened the channel to the same ability. The point being that there are those who, without proper training, shall we say, nevertheless heal. It is a further item of interest that those whose life does not equal their work may find some difficulty in absorbing the energy of intelligent infinity, and thus become quite distorted in such a way as to cause disharmony in themselves and others, and perhaps even find it necessary to cease the healing activity. Therefore, those of the first type, those who seek to serve and are willing to be trained in thought, word, and action, are those who will be able to comfortably maintain the distortion towards service in the area of healing. Questioner: Then would it be possible for you to train us in healing awareness? Ra. I am Ra. It is possible. Questioner: Will you train us? Ra. I am Ra. We will. Questioner: I have no idea how long this would take. Is it possible for you to give a synopsis of the program of training required? I have no knowledge of what questions to ask at this point. Ra. I am Ra. We consider your request for information, for as you noted, there are a significant number of vibratory sound complexes which can be used in sequence to train the healer. The synopsis is a very appropriate entry that you might understand what is involved. Firstly, the mind must be known to itself. This is perhaps the most demanding part of healing work. If the mind knows itself, then the most important aspect of healing has occurred. Consciousness is the microcosm of the law of one. The second part has to do with the disciplines of the body complexes. In the streamings reaching your planet at this time, these understandings and disciplines have to do with the balance between love and wisdom in the use of the body and its natural functions. The third area is the spiritual, and in this area, the first two disciplines are connected through the attainment of contact with intelligent infinity. Questioner: I believe I have a little idea of the accomplishment of the first step. Can you elaborate a little bit on the other two steps, which I am not at all familiar with? Ra. I am Ra. Imagine the body. Imagine the more dense aspects of the body. Proceed therefrom to the very finest knowledge of energy pathways, which revolve and cause the body to be energized. Understand that all natural functions of the body have all aspects from dense to fine, and can be transmuted to what you may call sacramental. This is a brief investigation of the second area. To speak to the third, if you will, imagine the function of the magnet. The magnet has two poles. One reaches up, the other goes down. The function of the spirit is to integrate the up-reaching yearning of the mind-body energy with the downpouring and streaming of infinite intelligence. This is a brief explication of the third area. Questioner: then would this training program involve specific things to do, specific instructions and exercises? Ra: I am Ra. We are not at this time incarnate among your peoples. Thus, we can guide and attempt to specify, but we cannot, by example, show. This is a handicap. However, there should indeed be fairly specific exercises of mind, body, and spirit during the teach-learning process we offer. It is to be once more iterated that healing is but one distortion of the law of one. To reach an undistorted understanding of that law, it is not necessary to heal or to show any manifestation, but only to exercise the discipline of understanding. We would ask that one or two more questions be the ending of this session. Questioner: my objective is primarily to discover more of the law of one, and it would be very helpful to discover the techniques of healing. I am aware of your problem with respect to free will. Can you state the law of one and the laws of healing to me? Ra: I am Ra. The law of one, though beyond the limitation of name, as you call vibratory sound complexes, may be approximated by stating that all things are one, that there is no polarity, no right or wrong, no disharmony, but only identity. All is one, and that one is love, light, light, love, the infinite creator. One of the primal distortions of the law of one is that of healing. Healing occurs when a mind-body-spirit complex realizes deep within itself the law of one. That is, that there is no disharmony, no imperfection, that all is complete and whole and perfect. Thus, the intelligent affinity within this mind-body-spirit complex reforms the illusion of body, mind, or spirit to a form congruent with the law of one. The healer acts as energizer or catalyst for this completely individual process. One item which may be of interest is that a healer asking to learn must take the distortion understood as responsibility for that ask receiving. This is an honor, duty, which must be carefully considered in free will before the asking. Questioner: I assume that we should continue tomorrow. Ra: I am Ra. Your assumption is correct, unless you feel a certain question is necessary. This instrument is nurtured by approximately this length of work. Questioner: I have one more short question. Is this instrument capable of 2 of these sessions per day, or should we remain with one? Ra: I am Ra. This instrument is capable of 2 sessions a day. However, she must be encouraged to keep her bodily complex strong by the ingestion of your foodstuffs to an extent which exceeds this instrument's normal intake of your foodstuffs. This due to the physical material which we use to speak. Further, this instrument's activities must be monitored to prevent overactivity, for this activity is equivalent to a strenuous working day on the physical level. If these admonishments are considered, the 2 sessions would be possible. We do not wish to deplete this instrument. Questioner: Thank you, Ra. Ra: I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite intelligence, which is the Creator. Go forth rejoicing in the power and the peace of the One. Adonai.